Hello there. It's the 15th of September and we had an online sociology class. Had a quick meetup for about an hour or so looking at week 10, and I'm just going to walk through some of the key ideas and concepts we covered. Um, this was looking at week 10 crime data. So feel free to open up the PowerPoint as well and click through as I talk through the things that we discussed. So week 10 crime data, we're all looking at trying to understand and make sense of the statistics on offender rates and crime. Particularly, we're interested in, let me just get through this. We're looking at crime rates including age, gender, socioeconomic status, ethnicity, as well as a range of factors that lead people to commit crimes like poverty, addiction, abuse, and a rebellion. We started off with just a little bit of a critical analysis of trying to sharpen our critical skills in approaching statistical analysis. And one key critical thinking skill is the idea that correlation does not imply causation. So sometimes there can be correlations between particular social phenomena like sunglasses sold and ice cream sales. Um, but to jump to conclusions to say that one is causing the other could be a logical fallacy of some sort. It could be faulty reasoning. So we just need to bear this in mind a little bit when approaching statistics. And here's some kind of humorous examples of when uh, correlations are clearly not causing one or the other. So you can see there's a correlation between the number of people who drown by falling in a pool with films that star Nicolas Cage, but really to say that one is causing the other is a pretty big leap. Okay, so a quick recap on 5 categories of crime covered in week 9. White collar crime, corporate, crimes against the person, victimless crimes, and crimes against the property. We had a look a bit at relationship between age and offender rates. As you can see here, I guess the one thing that was pointed out was that the age bracket 15 to 19 years of age, seems to be a decline, but everything else seems to be fairly stable. We're looking at offender rates in Victoria from the period 28, 29 through to 2016, 2017. Here we're looking at the proportion of offenders based on sex and age. I suppose the main thing to mention here is that for both male and female, a higher proportion of offender rates are committed in the younger age bracket, and then there's a kind of tailing off as people get older. You might like to look up some more recent statistics on this, and here's a link to do so. Have a look at the age bracket 15 to 19, see if the trend downwards is continuing, or if it's stabilizing, or if it's going up. All that would be interesting to look at and find out. Okay, so here's just some ideas on why people commit crimes. This is a big contestable idea. Um, Here are some key aspects that are covered in various literature in sociology and other social sciences. And probably you can see within government policies as well. There seems to be a inference that the um, these are connected or influential on committing crimes. So um, there would be, I suppose, higher statistical correlations between these aspects of things, these conditions, social conditions, and crime rates. We also talked about, there's a really, really good interesting short documentary looking at crime and gender. So just unpacking some of the key trends and statistics over the years. What's of interest is that in countless societies and across time and places, there seems to be quite a high number of young males committing crime as compared to other proportions and age brackets of the community. Um, and also over the last couple of years, 5, 10, 20 years, a smaller increase in the younger females that are committing crime in Western societies as well. The video this week, I think, has some really interesting sociological theories to try and understand this. One is outlined by discussing hegemonic masculinity, the idea that um, a particular type of masculinity, one position of power and influence, is portrayed to others in society as the ideal form of masculinity. And the fact that not everyone can achieve this um, uh, causes a high proportion of the male population to seek out power and influence in other ways by committing crime. So that's an interesting causal type of sociological explanation for the higher amounts of younger males committing crime in various societies and places around the world. Another idea that is unpacked a little bit in this video is the idea of socialization of gender roles, where it was discussed on female younger people in society have increased surveillance from social institutions like the family and education and government, just generally monitoring their movement, and much more so than younger males who have, this is a generalization of course, much more ease of movement in society and much less regulation. And perhaps this is a influential factor in explaining these statistical numbers across periods of time and also in different societies. Okay, so then we got on to thinking about, okay, well, we've been looking at crime and statistics, and obviously a huge event has happened this year and it's shifted social interactions and had rippling effects on every aspect of society. So, what is the impact of COVID restrictions on crime? And we talked about this a bit more. Here's just a jotting dot point note of the things that were discussed. Some people argued that there would be less crime, and they based their thinking a little bit on the idea that there would be less opportunity for offenders to commit those crimes. For instance, more people are at home, so a higher risk to burglars. Um, just generally, there's less people out in the community, so um, probably less assaults and crimes against the person, like at train stations and public places in the city and things like that. People are just not out as much, so they thought that there would be less crime. Others thought that perhaps there would be more crime. um, so that there might be more restrictions and rules in place, and that might affect um, crime rates. So they're probably thinking about people that have been um, would be covered in statistics on offenders relating to movement between restriction zones and things like that. People getting together, having house parties, that would lead to more instances of crime and offender rates. Perhaps also there's a sense of rebellion and anger as well, which might mean that there might be more crime as well. So we did a little bit of thinking about this, and it's worthwhile to think about the why of this as well. So what particular crimes are you thinking about? Remembering back to those 5 categories of crime, of crimes against the person, against property, against white collar crime, victimless crime, which is kind of like drug offences and things like that, and also corporate crime. Would these things be more or less? Would there be particular offences that would be likely to be on the rise or downward trend? But the more important thing, why so? And that could give us some interesting insights into the nature of crime and what causes crime. So we finished with a little bit, here's a little bit of a link to some New South Wales statistics for the period of April. This is just what I could gather so far, but from looking at, where are we? Looking at the Victorian statistics, they actually come out for the period up until June 2020. They come out on the 24th of June. So we had a little bit of a prediction, speculation, conjectures were raised amongst the class on what things would we see an increase in as far as offender rates, and what particular crimes do you think would be increased or decreased, and then also responding to that why. So what we're going to do is collect these and collate them. And after the holiday period, we're going to check back in with the Victorian statistics and see what predictions were accurate and which ones were not. Lastly, just as a final note, the main task for this week in week 10 on crime data is to look at a news article and to consider, suppose that you have, $40 million or a proportion of money to invest in crime prevention for younger people in society. What type of policies, or how would you spend this money to best achieve a decrease in crime prevention? A decrease in offender rates. And so thinking about things like I've already covered in the week, poverty, addiction, also the other ones mentioned this week were rebellion and abuse as well. These could be things that you could try and target, for instance, in this main task from week 10. If you really want to, you could even approach this within the COVID environment that we find ourselves in. If you had $40 million to reduce teenage offender rates in crime, say the Victorian Police gave you this money, how would you do so? Would it be, say, for instance, through awareness campaigns? Would you try to target social services or social workers? What type of policies do you think would be best achieved to try and reduce offender rates among teenagers? And I suppose in thinking about this, we need to think about what are the driving influential factors that contribute to teenagers committing crimes. So that's the main task for this week. And just to finish up, this is the last week of term 3. So we'll catch you all again on the other side of the holiday break. But just wishing you very good wishes for the break, and um, get some downtime, look after yourself, and we'll continue with sociology again when we come back for term 4.